Maris Hawkins, and I'm going to be talking about some online planning tips and tricks that you can use and that have helped me. I am a Spanish teacher. Right now, I am teaching grades pre-K through 8th grade. I have taught high school, and I have taught blended classes, which meet part-time, face-to-face, part-time as well. So I had experience, but let me tell you, even for me, this transition was challenging. If you want to follow me, I am on Twitter at Maris Hawkins. And then I also have a blog, marishawkins.wordpress.com, where I go into more detail about many of these ideas that I'm going to share today. So one thing that happens when I'm planning is I see so many great ideas. So many people have shared wonderful things, and I want to do them all. And that's not realistic for my students. And many times what I'm seeing might not fit what my students need. And so these are what I do when I feel that overwhelming feeling of I have no clue what to do, and I'm just looking at resource after resource and blog after blog. The first thing that I focus on is I make sure that I'm not overdoing the output. So that was my biggest mistake that I made when I started teaching in a blended class, was my students were journaling every single blended class, and that was just causing for burnout. My students needed input as well as output. So if you found that you've had students writing a lot or speaking a lot, scale back, have them do a writing or have them do a listening activity. EdPuzzle is great for this, and I'll talk about that later. Make sure to hit all the modes. So sometimes I'll find I've given my students a lot of listening recently, but I haven't given them a reading. Or they've been doing some speaking, but they haven't done a writing recently. So again, thinking about that helps me narrow down what I need my students to do, and that also helps me. And then stay focused with one unit for a longer period of time. Remember that it's taking your students longer to acquire this right now because they're not there with you to help them, and they also really don't have their peers to help them that many students rely on. So it's helpful to them if you do less and focus and just keep repeating that information to make sure that they do acquire something, as opposed to at the end feeling like it was a whirlwind. When planning for multiple preps, I many times will repeat the same activity. Now, in this case, it doesn't mean that I am using the same Flipgrid for both classes. It's just that if I'm doing a Flipgrid with one class, it makes sense to do it with another. Again, part of that decision is off my shoulders, and then I can just focus on making the Flipgrids and not, again, go through that circle in my head of, what am I going to plan? Also, you can simplify a project for various levels. So for example, with my 8th graders, they're going to make a video talking about the cultural themes in the book that we have been reading. I'll do a similar activity with my 6th graders, but require less. My 8th graders are about an intermediate low, and some are pushing intermediate mid. So I want them to start to elaborate on it. With my 6th graders, who some of them are still in the novice level, if they're writing a couple phrases here and there, that's all that I need. But we can do the same idea as well. And then the last thing that I love is templates, and Matt Miller, Ditch That Textbook website has been key for me during this distance learning time. So he has a ton of templates either on Google Drawings or Google Slides that you can assign to your students, and they can edit within that template. For example, a timeline. So if you're doing any of a reading activity and you want your students to sequence it out, again, that can be done with novice students and intermediate students. And then this is one of my ones that I just used with my 5th graders, but can be used also with a variety of levels. These are called Google Slides icon boards, and it's low prep, which is wonderful, and it shows some visual thinking. So again, especially with novice students who don't have as much language, they can use some of these symbols, and then they can just edit the slide and everything is there. Now, if they want to, they can get some more icons, they can get some more images, but for the most part, everything is there, and then they can just drag and edit it how they want. And then you can see, you can think that this would be great for a mind map with some words in the lower levels. Meanwhile, you could have upper levels do a sort of flow chart, and you can see there's other ones as well for you to play around with. So I highly suggest checking out Matt Miller's website for some templates that are again so low prep, and your students will be able to edit them themselves. The other thing that I like to do is to use various platforms in new ways. So one platform, one program that I love is Flipgrid. And in Flipgrid, students can record videos. And that's great. So I feel like what a lot of teachers do, and I did too, was I would give them a prompt, I would read them questions, and then have them record their answers. They could even ask questions, and peers could respond to them as well, because there's a response option. And so all of these were really effective ways to use Flipgrid. However, I wanted to continue to use Flipgrid because, remember, the less programs that you use, the easier it is on your kids because they're used to it. So I wanted to find a new way to use Flipgrid, but wasn't just the same question, because again, that's a lot of speaking on their end. So one thing that I've done, and I got the idea from Kara Jacobs, is to do a dictation. And so after a reading, I will read sentences that are true or false. Now, with a traditional dictation, I read the sentences and the students copy them down in Spanish as I read them in Spanish. If you want to, you could throw in having them translate there, or you could just have them write them in the target language. Then they decide if each is true or false, and their video back to me is telling me if it's true or false and correcting the false ones. So they would read 1, true, 2, true, 3, false. Here's the correct answer. So again, it's still some output, but it's a lot more input because they're listening to me during the dictation, and they can pause and re-listen a couple of times. Students can upload videos, so I'm excited for my students to upload their videos and to have their peers comment on them and really give them positive feedback, because that's what we all need right now. The last thing that we did was kind of a game, and it was really fun, and it was acting. So after my students had read, instead of speaking, they acted out a line in the book that we had read. And then their peers went back, looked at their video, and then tried to figure out what line they were acting out. So that was a fun game that we added on, and they really enjoyed that. Another thing is EdPuzzle. Like I said, EdPuzzle is so wonderful because you can embed a video in there and ask questions throughout, and students can replay the video if they need to, and if you're doing multiple choice, it gives them automatic feedback. So one of my tips for EdPuzzle during distance learning is I love to use mostly multiple choice questions. Add some open-ended questions in, but the multiple choice gives them that intermediate feedback that really helps them, or not the intermediate, the immediate feedback that really helps them when they're doing this work. Some other things that I've done is a movie talk. So instead of them listening, I will add in notes, and in my notes, they're audio comments. And so my students can hear my voice, and I can narrate what's happening in the target language and then ask them questions. I recently used this with both my 3rd and 4th grade class, and this was great. If you can create an open class, your younger elementary students can join it and do this. So I recommend it for 3rd and 4th grade as well, that you can give them the link and they're sent there. Another feature is if you go to content and click on add content, you can add a project. And with the project, students can choose a video and then annotate it. They add their questions and their comments just like you would. So you could have them upload the same video that you just did with a movie talk, and they could say in the target language what they understood. Or for intermediate students, you could have them find a video that they understood about a topic, embed it, and identify the main idea, just like you do in interpretive listening, and then identify where the supporting facts, identify important information that they understood. So I recommend, once students have done some EdPuzzles and have gotten used to it, that they try the project feature because it gives them more autonomy. Finally, the search feature. So many teachers have already made EdPuzzles. Search for them. Also, one thing that once the video is up, if you scroll below, there are all of the EdPuzzles that have already been made. Now, some of them, keep in mind, are copies from other people, so it can be a little daunting to scroll through them. But I always like to click and see, because it's so much easier to edit one instead of creating it yourself. So use the search feature. And then the last platform that I'm going to talk about is Pear Deck. Pear Deck is an add-on within Google Slides, and it makes your slideshow interactive. So you can add a variety of different questions. You can have them draw to show their understanding. You can have them write text. You can have them drag an icon to show if they agree or if they disagree, or if you're doing, I always like to have them draw the icon to where they think a country is on the map when we're talking about that country. And they can enter a number, and they can do multiple choice questions. So that's your basic EdPuzzle or Pear Deck, and it is wonderful. But I've added some new things that I've discovered during distance learning that have really increased it and have added to its value. So for me, a lot of times I will take screenshots of reading, so that way it doesn't automatically translate it. And I will put a screenshot of a reading on a slide. Then, instead of asking traditional questions, I can have students highlight the passages that they understand, or find all of the vocabulary, or highlight places in one color and people in another color. So by using the draw feature, it allows students to highlight things. They can also, if you put a regular picture in, they could label all of the vocabulary words that they see. Another thing I like about Pear Deck is you can embed videos. So if it's a shorter video and they don't need to do an EdPuzzle, I can put the video right in the slide and they can watch it there. And then I can ask a question about it on the following slide. So Pear Deck, you can have so many modes in here. You can have listening and writing, and again, just basic interpretation if they're highlighting. Then the last feature that they just rolled out recently was the ability to add audio to their slides. So that's really nice too, because if they're hearing your voice, it really motivates them to do more, and it allows you to make the slideshow even more interactive. So even if you don't have a video that you want them to watch, you can still record things for them to listen to. I didn't want to go too much into quizzes, but quizzes is a really fun online game that's multiple choice. And quizzes, I've used that a lot with my kids and I like it a lot, but you can also add audio to that. So that makes the game even richer, because they're not only answering questions, but they also have that audio component as well. I hope that this has been helpful for you, and it cuts down on some of your prep time, because this time has been overwhelming for us all. Stay safe.